So we now tell you about the perineum. We told you the pelvis is a basin-shaped cavity. So it has a false pelvis, this is the false pelvis, and this is the true pelvis. On the outside, there is the acetabulum, the ischial tuberosity, like this, the acetabulum and the ischial tuberosity. This pelvis is suspended by the abdominal muscles, transversus abdominis, internal oblique and external oblique. Then you will have the iliacus, the psoas, the iliacus and the psoas, and you will have the nerve, the artery and the vein, artery and the vein up till here. Then you will have a muscle which we call the obturator internus. Then you have a tendon, which is the tendon of the levator ani, and the space between the obturator internus, it is covered by fascia. The space between the obturator internus and the tendon of the levator ani is called as hiatus of Schwalbe. This is that space, the hiatus of Schwalbe. Then we make the levator ani, and everything above the levator ani is pelvis, and below the levator ani is perineum. Through the slit between the two levator ani, posteriorly would pass the rectum and the anal canal, and anteriorly would pass the vagina, the genital system and the urinary system. Now this is the auricular process. You are looking at the pelvis from the medial side, the greater sciatic notch, the ischial spine, the lesser sciatic notch, the ischiopubic ramus, ischial tuberosity, ischiopubic ramus. And here we have the obturator foramen. And on this side you have the pubic crest, the pubic tubercle, the notch for the artery, vein and nerves, the pectineal eminence, the anterophiliac spine, the anterosuppleac spine, and the iliac crest. Here you have the sacrum, and here you have the sacrotuberous ligament and the sacrospinous ligament, which is muscular on its inside. Here we'll place the ligaments first, the inguinal ligament, the obturator membrane, and then we'll place the obturator internus muscle like this, which is going out of the lesser sciatic notch to get inserted into the femur. So this is the obturator internus muscle. From the sacrum, getting out of the greater sciatic notch, is the piriformis, And above the piriformis, you have the superior gluteal artery, vein and nerve. Below the piriformis, the inferior gluteal artery, vein and nerve. The three nerves, sciatic nerve, posterior cutaneous nerve, thigh nerve to quadratus femoris, and the pin structures, which get out of the greater sciatic notch and re-enter in the lesser sciatic notch. And the pin structures are pudendal nerve, internal pudendal artery, and the nerve to obturator internus. The nerve to obturator internus. So these are pin structures, and as they approach the ischial tuberosity, they lie in a canal which is called as the Alcock's canal. We told you that from the pubic symphysis to the ischial spine is this tendon of the levator ani muscle, and between it and the obturator internus is the hiatus of Schwalbe. Above is the pelvis, above the levator ani is the pelvis, and below the levator ani is the perineum. So, this is the levator ani going to the coccyx, and here is the pubococcygeal part, going from the pubis to the coccyx. So pubococcygeus and ichthyococcygeus, these form the levator ani. We'll color this levator ani into, so that you can understand that this is a horizontal muscle and it is forming the inferior boundary of the abdomen, and below it is the perineum. So if we see this perineum, you will find that the perineum is a triangle directed forwards and a triangle directed backwards. So if you take into account that there are two ischial tuberosities on two sides, therefore this perineum will be divided into a posterior anal triangle and an anterior urogenital triangle. Urogenital. The nerve itself says that this will pass the urethra, the vagina, and the anal triangle will pass the anal canal. So let us study these urogenital and anal triangles in a little bit of greater detail. We make that picture of the false and the true pelvis again. We place the obturator internus, the tendon of the levator ani, and the levator ani muscle. Now, here is the rectum going through this and becoming the anal canal. So these are the longitudinal fibers of the rectum. Outer wall is longitudinal fibers covered by fascia transversalis. Then there are the circular fibers circular fibers of the rectum like this. And as this rectum comes into the anal canal, you will find that the anal verge ends in the gluteal skin. So this is the anal verge. So in the anal verge, there is a muscle which is called as the corrugator cutis ani. This makes the anal verge collapse. This anal verge, instead of circular, it becomes like this because of this sphincteric action of this corrugator cutis ani, and therefore any stool that is sticking to it is washed off, and this is called as the postage stamp effect. Above the anal verge is the junction of the ectoderm, which is from the outside, and the endoderm, and this is a white line, and this is called as the white line of Hilton. Above this you have columns, which are called as the columns of Morgagni, and they are joined by walls. So this is the column. They are joined by walls like this, and this is called as the columns of Morgagni. And these are called as the walls of ball. And this line which is formed, this line that is formed, is called as the dentate line. Then the levator ani gets particularly strong here, and this is the puborectal or the pubococcygis portion. And if this is the direction of the rectum and this is the direction of the anal canal, then this pubococcygis muscle pulls it, thus preventing the stool from entering into the anal canal. So this is the mechanism by which you can control the stool. Now, between the ischial tuberosity, I told you at the tip of the ischial tuberosity there is a canal which is called as the Alcock's canal on these two sides, and they contain the pudendal nerve and the internal pudendal artery. And then this fascia rises up and goes like this and meets the anal canal. So the inferior rectal artery actually passes like this and supplies the anal canal. The space between the ischium and the rectum and anal canal is filled by a pad of fat, which is called as the ischiorectal pad of fat. And this is the ischiorectal fossa. Now we'll use this diagram. We'll rub off the other side, which explained to you how these are triangles, and will tell you that the urogenital triangle, the base is a membrane, which is called as the perineal membrane, and this perineal membrane ends in the perineal body. There is a superior fascia of the pelvic diaphragm, like this, and this space between the levator navi and the superior fascia is the anterior recess of the ischiorectal fossa. So this space here is the anterior recess of ischiorectal fossa, and the perineal membrane ending in the perineal body and the superior fascia of the urogenital diaphragm enclose a space which is called as the deep perineal pouch. Then the superficial fascia of the pelvic diaphragm encloses the superficial perineal pouch, and the fascia encloses the penis. Encloses the penis and goes into the abdomen as the Scarpa's fascia. This part of the fascia that encloses the penis is called as Colles fascia, and this is called as Scarpa's fascia. So, now this is the superficial perineal pouch. This is the superficial perineal pouch, and this is the deep perineal pouch. And let us place the bladder in this region. So let us rub all this off so that we can really place the bladder, because the bladder will be hiding all this. So here is the membranous urethra, and this membranous urethra leads to prostatic urethra, and then it leads to the bladder, urinary bladder. The urinary bladder primarily is a inverted pyramid. It has got a superior surface, a posterior surface, and an anterolateral surface. The bladder is connected to the umbilicus by a ligament which is called as urachus. On these two angles join the ureters. Now, coming from the anterior abdominal wall, we'll make it a different color. So coming from the anterior abdominal wall, deep inguinal ring is the vas deferens, which crosses the ureter like this, goes down, and is joined by the duct of the seminal vesicles. So here will be the seminal vesicles, and with vas deferens joining the seminal vesicles where the sperms are stored, they end into the bladder. And that is called as the ejaculatory duct. Now the prostate encloses this space, and the internal sphincter lies in the deep perineal pouch, which is supplied by the pudendal nerve and which prevents the urine from escaping. In the superficial perineal pouch, the urethra continues as the perineal urethra, and then it becomes the penile urethra, So this is the membranous urethra, above is the prostatic urethra, and there is the perineal and the penile urethra. This urethra is basically covered by corpora spongiosa, which has a muscle also. The corpora has a muscle which helps in the ejaculation, a pumping of the perineal urethra, so that the sperms can be pumped into the out of the penis. These corpora, we'll make these corpora in greater detail so that you can see it here. If this is the pubic symphysis, is the istiopubic ramus, this is the perineal membrane, the perineal body, behind is the coccyx, the sacrotuberous ligaments, the anal canal, and the ischiorectal fossa of the both sides. This ischiorectal fossa will go superior to the urogenital diaphragm, forming the anterior recess of the ischiorectal fossa. So then this perineal membrane, the superficial perineal pouch we have taken off, because that superficial perineal pouch will come from both sides and close the testes, lie above the corpora spongiosum and enclose the testes of the opposite side. So that is the superficial perineal pouch. But we are not considering it just now. So this will be the anterior recess of the ischiorectal fossa. Then on this we'll place the vagina and then the urethra. So if we do away with the vagina, then we will place the two corpora spongiosa on both sides. These are fibrous structures which in a male would combine to form corpora spongiosa and enclose the perineal urethra. So these are the bulbocavernosus part of the corpora, and on this would be the ischiospongiosus, and these four will form what is called as the root of penis. The penis will come down like this, and it will be supported by a dorsal ligament of penis from the pubic symphysis, and piercing it, the dorsal ligament would be the dorsal vein of penis. So if there is any rupture at this point, the venous drainage of the penis will stop, the penis will get congested, erect and painful. The condition is called as priapism. So now let me quickly tell you about the bladder and the micturition reflex. So here is the urethra, here is the bladder. Then this is ending in the perineal urethra. I told you that this is the perineal membrane. This is the superior fascia of the pelvic diaphragm. On both sides you have the ischial tuberosity. And we told you that you have a muscle in the deep perineal pouch. The superficial perineal pouch is formed like this, and closes the two scrotum and becomes like this. So this is the superficial perineal pouch. The deep perineal pouch was supplied by the pudendal nerve coming from behind through the Alcock's canal, and this would make you voluntarily control micturition. Unless and until you find a place, you can't start micturating because the pudendal nerve closes the membranous urethra and prevents urine from passing. Above it would be the prostate gland. These are the two lateral lobes of the prostate. There is a posterior lobe and an anterior lobe also. The posterior lobe of the prostate is, if this is the bladder, the posterior lobe of the prostate is like this. It projects above the, may project above the it may project above the internal sphincter of the bladder. And this projection is called as the median lobe of the prostate. This will be called as this projection is because of this median lobe of the prostate, which is lying above the internal sphincter. So if the urine comes in contact of this, you will start feeling micturition, even when the urine has not passed the internal sphincter and has not come into the prostatic urethra. Then there is the ejaculatory duct. This is combined from the seminal vesicles and the vas deferens. This is the median lobe and this is the posterior lobe of the prostate. So you can examine this posterior lobe of the prostate and it should have a groove palpable. If the groove is not palpable, it is indicative of prostatic cancer. So from here, this will pass through the deep perineal pouch, where the muscle, internal sphincter, would prevent the urine from coming out automatically. Then you will have the perineal urethra, the penile urethra, and this will be supported by the dorsal ligament of penis, which will be pierced by the dorsal vein of penis, which will ultimately go and meet the bladder plexus. So, if we are trying to see it in this view, we will see that there is a smooth mucosal portion of triangular form ending in the projection of the median lobe of pelvis, prostate gland. So this smooth part is called as trigone. Then there will be the ureteric orifices, and this will be the rugosity part of the bladder. If you see the ureter, it pierces the bladder wall in an oblique fashion, so that when the pressure rises during micturition, the urine does not reflux back into the ureter. And if this does not happen, during micturition the vesico-ureteric reflux persists, then it is called as the golf hole ureter, which means it is open all the time. So you don't want urine to regurgitate back into the. Then you have, outside this you have the muscle of the urinary bladder. Now this muscle of the urinary bladder is very, very special, because normally a muscle will contract, and will relax. But here the muscle contracts, relaxes, but the length it has gained during contraction persists. So there are three phases of contraction: contracts, relaxes, but retracts. Therefore, the volume keeps on coming down. And this muscle has got a ratchet mechanism by which this locks and prevents the relaxation and causes the retraction. So there is a ratchet mechanism which allows this, and these muscles are more longitudinal outside and more circular inside. Then after the muscle, you have the venous plexus, which actually drains the bladder. So there is the venous plexus, and all this is covered by the fascia transversalis. The problem is that if the bladder is distended, then the blood arteries will keep on pumping blood, but this venous plexus will get blocked. Therefore, the mucosa will become congested and it will start bleeding, resulting in hematuria. Therefore, if there is a retention of bladder, either because of obstruction or because of neurogenic retention, then ultimately hematuria will start because the pressure inside the bladder will obliterate the veins and the arteries will continue to pump, and this will lead to hematuria. Now we come to the prostatic urethra. There is a projection in the prostatic urethra called as the viru montanum. And this projection has got a H type of opening, which is called as utriculus masculinus, and these H-shaped slits are for the ejaculatory ducts. So if you want to understand micturition, first thing, bladder fills. To about 400 cc. Then, because of this, the local reflex in the bladder starts. This is the bladder, and when it has filled, the local reflex, that means stretch from here, making the muscles contract, will start. And what will happen is that the activity of muscles in the wall will increase and the internal sphincter will become loose. So activity in the internal sphincter becomes less and the urine would trickle into the prostatic urethra. Now in the prostatic urethra, where we told you was the viru montanum, are chemoreceptors which are sensitive to urine, and these chemoreceptors would take an afferent course, go to the spinal cord and get a reflex contraction beginning at the two ureteric orifices, and therefore this is the spinal reflex. So one is the bladder reflex, initial, which causes the urine to trickle into the prostatic urethra. Now you will start feeling, as soon as the spinal reflex starts, you would start feeling that the bladder is full and you must micturate. So you'll find a place. Till then, the passage of urine would be stopped by the pressure on the membranous urethra by the internal sphincter, supplied by the pudendal nerve. So when this relaxes, this is the external sphincter, this is the external sphincter. When this relaxes, urine will start flowing out and will keep the spinal reflex will continue till there is the last drop of urine passes from the prostatic urethra and the chemo stimulation stops. Now this is the reason why the post void residual urine is always less than 100 cc's. If it is more, that simply means that this mechanism of complete evacuation is not working properly. So we covered the bladder and the rectum and the uterus. Let us leave it to our gynecology friends to comment on it, because there's a very important mechanism which prevents the prolapse of the uterus